Everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do a Bath & Body Works White Barn Candle Company haul and in-depth sniff comparison review video. It's kind of a 3-in-1. What that means, sometimes you get just a haul from me, sometimes you get an in-depth sniff review, and sometimes an in-depth sniff comparison review. The difference being the haul is, hey, here are my first impressions. The in-depth sniff review is kind of an in-depth analysis of what I think of the notes and the build of a fragrance, and the in-depth sniff comparison is that with the add-on of actually comparing a fragrance to other scents, fragrances, candles that I smelled before and you may be familiar with, to really get the closest thing we can get to sort of a smell-o-vision of, all right, take this candle that you know, take a bit of this candle you know, put it together, and that's what this new blend is reminiscent of or in the family of, which hopefully as a review kind of methodology is something that really will give you a true understanding of not just what I like or what I think of it, but also what it truly might smell like from a neutral standpoint, whether it's something that I like or don't like or what my opinions are, though of course fragrance is very subjective. So I have 4 candles today that I'm going to be doing this in-depth sniff comparison review on from the brand new White Barn Neutrals collection. I believe they're calling it for fall, so we had that in the springtime, and now they have some new scents added to it for fall. Bath & Body Works did a pretty big drop July 1st of 5 fall preview collections, or just 5 fall collections, sort of mostly scents that are returning favorites or returning scents, and then 2 collections that had some new, primarily new in this Neutrals collection. So of course you've got your Bakery collection out, you have a Luminary collection, there is your White Barn Core collection, a new White Barn Nature collection, which looks kind of intriguing, some new scents there potentially, or maybe repackages depending on the naming mechanism. Didn't get to sniff those from the White Barn Nature, but the White Barn Neutrals collection is mostly new fragrances. So again, there are 5, 4 of which I purchased. The 3 I did not purchase are Leather and Brandy, which is new. To me, smelled really kind of surprisingly fresh for a leather and brandy, which I thought would be heavy and dark and, you know, books and cigars and brandy snifters. It really was, at least through my mask, was more toward like a birch fresh barbershop kind of candle. To me, it almost smelled a bit like the bergamot and birch candle from the springtime White Barn Ingredients collection, where it was just, you know, bergamot plus birch. So not a must-have. And then the other 2 that I didn't purchase are Dark Amber and Oud, which is returning from the spring, and of course, randomly, Cinnamon Spice Vanilla, which is basically your cinnamon sugar donut from 11 years ago at this point. But love it, but wasn't what I was looking for today. So I'll show you the 4 that I purchased from this White Barn Neutrals collection, and then I will do the in-depth sniff comparison review on each of them. So we've got Hinoki Wood and Lavender. Excited to talk about that one. Cypress and Amber. Always love a good cypress. Got Coffee and Whiskey. And then finally, Spiced Pumpkin and Patchouli. So really interesting blends. You know, I don't want people to sort of see them and discount them as, oh, these are just like the men's collection or they're cologne-y scents. Try to get rid of the idea of cologne-y. I know we all think of that just because so many of the traditional fragrances, if you go to, you know, your Sephora or your Macy's or things like that, are gonna be, you've got the same 20 notes mixed about for a traditional men's fragrance, though any fragrance really should be unisex in my mind. It's, you know, different fragrances for different vibes, for different times, for different people, but that's a whole other video I could rant, and I've ranted on that before if you've been watching my channel for a while. All that to say, I don't really like to think of cologne because it really doesn't mean anything. Bergamot is often thought of as a cologne fragrance because it might be in Bath & Body Works men's collection, but it's not necessarily cologne, and cologne or cologne is not masculine. It is not something necessarily built just for men. It is just really about cologne. Originally was citrus-based perfumes, and parfum, perfume, or cologne, so eau de parfum, eau de toilette, eau de cologne, are really just primarily about the concentrations of fragrance oils in the base, is really what it comes down to, is primarily intensity and ratio, really, like math. And a little bit of, you know, maybe there's a little bit more of a citrus base in your colognes, things like that. So all that to say, I don't like to think of it as cologne. It's the language we use, especially in the candle community, but I'm trying to get away from that and just dig more into what is the scent. What does it evoke? What does it feel? What is it used for? So digging right in, Hinoki Wood and Lavender. Just like the Neutrals collection earlier this year, they are a matte, really kind of creamy, muted colors. I kind of like them. I dig it. I think it works. For springtime, it was a little bit dull, but for moving into fall, into winter even, I think it kind of works. And just these really nice kind of painted, again, creamy lids. And then we've got Hinoki Wood and Lavender, as you can see there, just this White Barn, and Calming Hinoki Wood, Fresh Lavender, hint of coconut. Same thing on the bottom, you've got there. Now, Hinoki Wood is interesting. So Hinoki Wood is actually a Japanese cypress tree. So think of cypress, you've got your pine, right? So it's not a straight up pine, but it is in that sort of family of fragrances at least. And Hinoki wood is really prized and cherished in Japan. It's an incredibly versatile wood that is used for building temples and homes and anything you can imagine. But it also has true sort of healing properties, and not just sort of, oh, you know, think about it and it'll make you feel good. But truly, like the NIH has studies on their government website that lists like touching Hinoki wood versus touching marble and what it can literally do to your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, which is kind of wild. Also, just walking through a forest, think of the scent you get in a forest, the calming benefits you get, the deep breath where you just feel calmed and kind of reinvigorated and uplifted. That's actually a molecule that is phytoncides, like phyton, like plant, and side, like, well, kill, but it doesn't mean to kill plants, but it is sort of a defense mechanism of plants and primarily many trees. And it's this molecule that is released that actually is a very calming fragrance and just like literal, you know, molecule, chemical to humans and I assume to animals, not sure. But that is something that Hinoki wood is very much prized for. So it's not just the quality of the wood, the beauty of the wood, the strength and power of the wood, but the scent alongside it is very heavy on those calming, unique properties. And I've never smelled true, I mean, I'm assuming this is going to be imitation. I've never smelled true Hinoki wood, but I would love to, and I'll have to look for some to really understand what that scent truly, truly is. But there's a lot of, they're a little trend hopping here, which that's fine. That's what mass market does. There are many other companies that do have Hinoki wood blends in them, both from fine personal fragrance parfums and your home fragrance. I know Apotheke, which I just did a review video here, if you didn't check out the brand introduction there, and Earl Grey Bitters review, they have in their signature collection of fragrances a Hinoki lavender as well. So I haven't compared that side by side to this, but they are similar in the sense that they're Hinoki and lavender. Sniffing this, getting into it. The lavender is very soft. It is a little bit of a powdery lavender, kind of in the background. It is the floral. It's not so much the herbal lavender that sometimes you get, the astringency. And the woodiness in this almost comes off as, to me, a bit, I was expecting more of, thinking cypress, of something along the lines of an invigorating, maybe astringent pine or a bit of a cedar or something kind of resinous. And I'm not really getting so much of that traditional. It's almost more like a marine kind of driftwood, sort of a bit of the pine edge to it, but not overwhelming. The coconut, I wouldn't pick it out. I suppose there is something that kind of grounds this that I almost would have thought maybe like a tonka or something like that, but it could be like the coconut meat. Similar to coconut in the coconut vetiver candle from the spring White Barn ingredients collection, where it was just kind of that raw earthy coconut, potentially is a little bit in here. But really what I get from this a lot that took me a while of sniffing is a very fresh, dirty, earthy lemon. So not the zest, the bright oils, not a fresh juice exactly, but if you sliced a lemon and dropped it on the forest floor and picked it up and it was covered in dirt, literally, and just the pith and the pulp of the lemon, I get a lot of that in here. And that could just be my nose, but there was a lemon, sort of a natural collection from 2018 at Bath & Body Works, where it was the squat black candles, and they had mint, they had lemon, very straightforward. The notes were like lemon, lime, and lemongrass. It's sort of that lemongrass-esque, I suppose, like a very natural, herbaceous lemon. I get in here, which really freshens this up a lot more than you'd expect for a wood candle. I'm not comparing it to any of the traditional lavender candles that I would have expected I was going to compare it to. This video especially, these are not, oh, this is a directory package, or this is exactly like X. It's more so, here's one note from this, or it's reminiscent of or in the family of or adjacent to, like sister scents, or maybe even like second cousin scents. But Surf Shop from a couple years back at Bath & Body Works was Oceanside Birch, Sparkling Waves, Summer Spruce, and Sage. The similarity here is kind of in that wood and a little bit of that almost ozonic, kind of that soft, not quite as dry as driftwood or marine, but like this has the spruce and the birch and the waves, but not so much forest, but it still is a little bit calming, cooling. It's a similar wood in here where it is kind of a cool, borderline marine. So like maybe a forest on a cliff by the ocean, which, I mean, Japan is surrounded by an ocean, so that could make sense. And then I wanted to compare it to lavender coconut, just because This has lavender and coconut, so Bath & Body Works, let's see what they're doing. And this was just Refreshing Lavender, Warm Coconut, and Vanilla Bean from back in 2016, 2017. Really nothing like this. This is supremely creamy, floral, and astringent. Honestly, the reason why I still have it half burned is I don't really like it that much. Kind of weird and not really similar to this. So that's just more so in here to say, hey, if you thought it might be this because of the notes, it's not. But really, it is nice that it is a wood that is not too dry, but it is not, certainly does not have any, if you think cypress or pine holiday, completely remove that from your mind. Not at all like that. And the lavender is there just as a calming, more aromatherapeutic, dried lavender, really is what I would say for that. So hard to explain, worth sniffing. Go in with an open mind and try not to have a preconceived notion of it being super floral or super herbal or super woody, because it kind of bucks all of those assumptions going in. Interesting. We'll see how it burns. I hope it stays as complex or more when it's lit. And then we've got Cypress and Amber, such a pretty green. There was a candle I reviewed last week, Lofco's Frosted Pine, that was a similar color where I was like, man, it matches the wall. I mean, literally matches the wall. Cypress and Amber, notes of dark cypress, smoked amber, and fresh bergamot. So interesting, cypress, again, is truly in that sort of pine family. So it's going to lean sort of into that pine resinous. It's going to be herbaceous, spicy, slightly woody, kind of that evergreen scent. And of course, we know bergamot is, again, it's in many colognes, but it's not cologne-y. Bergamot is that citrus fruit that is very sparkling. It is almost a little bit limey, but not quite. It's got that knobbly skin on it, and it is really a mixture of like a true green citrus, almost an herbal citrus. And of course, amber can go many directions, whether it's Ambrox or your traditional amber is going to be very resinous, soft, warm, a base note that is going to be in line with your sandalwoods and with your other resins and your leathers and your cashmeres and things like that. So sniffing this one, I like it a lot. I like it. I wanted to like it a lot. I thought I would like it a lot because, I mean, amber's a bit hit or miss, but cypress certainly, anything evergreen I am almost always into. What's interesting in this is on first sniff, it smells very reminiscent of a Bath & Body Works candle, probably a top #2 seller of probably all time for fall. And I realized it also smells really similar to another scent. And so actually with this one, I'm kind of calling it as, I think, think to the semi-annual sale blends collection where it was like rosewater and ivy and mahogany teakwood, or Paris Cafe and cinnamon spice vanilla. I truly believe that this is potentially a blend of two top fragrances, and they just happen to not include it in a blends collection and put it in this collection because it truly is a blend with a little bit of, half of each of these, maybe 1 or 2 notes removed, but this is Marshmallow Fireside plus flannel. And I'll get into that. First sniff, you're like, oh, is that Marshmallow Fireside? No, definitely not a direct dupe, but it has that, the embers, the woodsiness. The notes in this, of course, toasted marshmallows, sweet vanilla cream wrapped in the aroma of rich smoldering woods. One of those smoldering woods is going to be cypress and cedar and, mixed woods, but really very similar. And there's a sweetness to this. Again, there's 3 notes listed here. There's 5, 7, 10 notes actually in the blend. There's definitely a sweetness to this. Take away, not quite the warm round vanilla that's in here, but certainly the woods that are in here and a bit of that non-distinct sweetness. And then add in from flannel, notes on this, bergamot, mahogany, and a delicate veil of musk. It really is the bergamot from here, which is very bright, refreshing, uplifting. There's a sweetness to it. So maybe it's a bit of the musk. I actually do think at some point, Marshmallow Fireside may have actually even listed musk, like a sugared musk, or even potentially amber in the notes. So it does not surprise me. This certainly could have some amber along with the musk and bergamot and mahogany in here. So take out the mahogany, take out the true kind of gooey sweetness from that, put the rest together, and you really have cypress and amber. Like sniffing the side by side, it's so interesting because it is the bright, fresh bergamot and a bit of that musk perhaps. And here it's the woods from Marshmallow Fireside. So I think some people will smell it and say, oh, I don't need it because I love flannel, or I don't need it because I love Marshmallow Fireside. That's fine, but it really is a blend of those two in my mind. So Worth burning, probably not worth having multiples of, but again, it's interesting. I kind of appreciate it from the lens of a blends collection. Next up, we've got coffee and whiskey. Forget the name on this one. Coffee and whiskey, notes of bold Irish whiskey, splash of vanilla, hint of coffee. Based on the name, you think, oh, this is like an Irish coffee. It's gonna be coffee forward with some Irish whiskey in there, which is gonna be very sort of dried fruits and raisins and a little bit of prunes and all of that caramel, vanilla, oakiness that's gonna come from your aged and blended Irish whiskey. Not really. Not really. To me, this is nice. It is warm, comforting, woody, like a dry, honestly, kind of like a soft sandalwood, which is fine from, you could potentially get that from whiskey. I often said when I was younger, when I would try Irish whiskey, I was like, I feel like I'm drinking furniture, which like get some Chivas Regal or something and you're like, that I'm drinking like my grandmother's hutch. But bold Irish whiskey, okay, to me that really is primarily sandalwood in here. And vanilla is less of a sweet drinking vanilla and more of like a tonka, an earthy grounding vanilla. The hint of coffee, boy, it's there, but it is way far in the background. It really, this is a marketing thing for me, the coffee and whiskey. This is not strong on coffee. It could be a note in there, but it's not, you know, primary note worth being in the name, in my opinion. And what I get from this, it's kind of a mixture, not quite the blends like the Cypress and Amber, but reminiscent of two candles, one being White Barn's Sandalwood Vanilla, very traditional from back in the Slatkin era. And this was sandalwood, caramel, juniper, and vanilla, okay? So certainly the caramel notes, the sweetness of the sandalwood and vanilla, similar to this, where I would say this is a bit fresher, this is a bit more sweet and soft and like a, you know, the blanket that's on here. And then it's also kind of similar to last year's White Pumpkin Oakwood. Notes on this, fresh picked white pumpkin, smooth sandalwood, and spiced pear. I don't get the pear in this. I actually bought it and never was in the mood to burn it. I thought, and I liked it, and I still like it, but there were always candles I wanted to burn more than this one, so I didn't burn it last year. Definitely has that kind of, yeah, you know what, I rolled my eyes, but there is sort of that pumpkin in there that's not quite, it's a fresh, raw pumpkin, but it's not quite your jack-o'-lantern, you know, your pumpkin carving, that kind of pumpkin. More like just a squash. And of course, that's not in here. But the bit of that sandalwood, it's funny they call it oakwood in here, is very similar to the coffee and whiskey. But again, there's something else on top of it that I suppose it's the coffee doing it, but it's pieces of these two with something else that it's hard to put my finger on. It could be more of that whiskey blend, I suppose. Again, a little bit of notes of that caramel, but don't think sweet ooey gooey Bath & Body Works caramel. Think like a bitter caramel that you get if you have flan, perhaps. So there's some sugar in there, but you're getting more so the burnt sugar flavor. That's the same thing in, you know, your Irish whiskey. It's not going to be sweet, but there will be sweet notes. Just like if you're drinking a glass of red wine that has berry notes, well, if it's super dry and there's no residual sugar, you're not actually getting a sweetness. It's just like reminiscent of something that is sweet. So probably my least favorite from the collection, but I still wanted to try it because, again, I like whiskey and I like coffee and I like when there are coffee blends, but this one really is not a coffee blend on its own. But we'll see what it's like burning, but it's very much in the family. It's not a beverage. More so, think of the vibe from your sandalwood vanillas, your white pumpkin oak woods, your soft, woodsy, comforting woods. And the final one, spiced pumpkin and patchouli. I think maybe people are fairly excited about this one. Notes on this, rich pumpkin, warm patchouli, a touch of cinnamon sugar. Right from the jump, I will tell you, I don't have any to compare this to because this really, for Bath & Body Works, is brand new. There's nothing in my mind that has really smelled like this before. And it's interesting because patchouli, everyone thinks patchouli as just like, you know, head shop and earthy and hippie and just like kind of dirty. But patchouli is a leaf, and it is, of course, like, you know, the extraction from these green leaves, but it is very herbal, very green, kind of resinous. It is heady, it is intense, certainly kind of resinous like your frankincense would be or something along those lines, with a strong hit of star anise. That's what I get in here, heavily over on the top of this, because it is just a super powdery sweet and a spice sweet. So again, not a candy sugar sweet, but in the way that spices you know, if you get like cinnamon orange tea that has nothing but cinnamon and orange in the tea without any sugar, it can seem incredibly sweet to, you know, your tongue and your nose without having actual sweetness to it. And that's what I get on the top of this. With that patchouli, without the patchouli being too earthy or overwhelming or dry, it's like I really get that green, fresh patchouli. And the pumpkin is there, just that raw, they say rich pumpkin, maybe a little bit of a clove or a cinnamon, but not really. To me, it's like star anise, buckets of it on top of this. And certainly some like freshly chopped, rich, raw pumpkin or puree, but not even gourmand. Like that's what's so interesting, is this certainly is not bakery. This is certainly not a sweet, spicy, and it's not really even a gourmand necessarily. So it's hard to say. The cinnamon sugar, I think that's so that people will buy it. I truly don't think that the sweetness is coming from the sugar, and I don't know that there's cinnamon in there. If there is, it is a sharp, peppery cinnamon, almost like a strong, like Vietnamese cinnamon. But I think it's anise more than anything on top of it. Strange, but intriguing, and this is something that I think will be very, very strong. Not what you'd want all the time, but when it comes to conceptual, like this is almost the kind of scent that when you think of some of the brands like Boy Smells or something like that, this is, if they were to do a pumpkin, this would be their interpretation, potentially kind of a pumpkin where, all right, there is pumpkin there, but there's so much else going on that it is not just sweet cinnamon pumpkin or a pumpkin cupcake or whatever, you know, the bakery collections are like. Yet it's still enough in that arena where it is appropriate for fall burning. So really interesting. I'm appreciating that Bath & Body Works is doing this more conceptual line. Granted, I'm gonna be burning tons of sweet, delicious treat fragrances throughout the fall season, but it's really also nice to get something that is a little bit more either out of left field or conceptual, or just, you know, as fragrance fans who buy lots of candles, most of us watching or buying lots of candles, something just to challenge your nose and to get into something that's outside of the comfort zone and new and different. And this is something that White Barn Bath & Body Works is doing that I think is honestly just great for everyone to experience different things. It's like, don't just stick with a couple things you love, try new, because you might be surprised what you like. So let me know what you think of these. If my, you know, interpretations are spot on, or if you completely disagree, would love to hear your thoughts on this collection or any of the others. And until next time, take care.